Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Lazouzi from easymedicaldevice.com, and today we will go not anymore in the future, because artificial intelligence is not anymore in the future, it's today. So we'll go to talk about artificial intelligence. And yes, as said, a lot of when we were a kid, maybe for some of us, we were talking about artificial intelligence like the big thing that will be controlling the world and everything. So let's see what's the status actually. And for that, I have with me Christophe Girardey from Wega. So Christophe, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Munir, for the invitation. I think, as you said, it's no longer the future. I remember very well many films in the past. Maybe you remember iRobot. Or
iRobot, exactly. I wanted to say that, the movie iRobot.
What's going to happen now? And I think it's important to make some statement about where are we. And
exactly. So yeah, let's review that specifically for medical devices. But before to start, you were on the podcast two times now. So, but maybe people don't know you specifically. So, can you make a small introduction of yourself?
Yes, I'm pleased to do so. So I'm Christophe. From background, I was a software developer at the beginning of my career, but I always work in the regulated industry in various areas. So first in air traffic control area, also highly regulated. And now since many years with Wega, specialized in pharma and medical device especially, so life science area. And myself, I mainly focus on quality aspects, regulatory aspects, and now to fulfill all of that. And with a big focus on software, and artificial intelligence is obviously software.
Exactly.
And, yeah, that's in short about me.
Yeah, so we start now to talk more and more about artificial intelligence, more and more also when, for example, we start to talk about ChatGPT, for example, or about a lot of software that are now starting to use artificial intelligence for that. Sometime I wanted to, we have the acronym software as medical devices. At a point I will say, can we now create artificial intelligence as a medical device? Because mainly it's looking like that. So, so we have now a lot of software that are really talking about the fact that they are using artificial intelligence, etc. So just to clarify a bit, because this can maybe be scary for some people when we start to talk about that, can we just as an introduction make a clear information of what is artificial intelligence, or what, and if there are many types of it, or if it's one artificial intelligence only?
No, absolutely. And I think this is an important aspect, because many people talk about artificial intelligence when they just talk about maybe complex statistics, or they think they have built an artificial intelligence. But you are right, there is right now a lot of advertisement or trend when you talk about ChatGPT. I think many of the people in the podcast probably used it already and tried it. This is a conversational artificial intelligence, but you have also many other examples already available on the market. Maybe self-driving car is an aspect that is existing since many years, that uses quite a lot of artificial intelligence. Maybe some more routine tools you use, like maybe Spotify, Netflix, they use as well some aspect like that. When you listen to a specific music, they will recommend some others that you might like in the future. There are already some aspects like that. But what is it really the difference to classical software? It's maybe the place where really we need to make a little bit of theory first. Is in classical software, what you typically have is you have a program that you develop, and when you inject some data to this program, it gives you an answer. And it is typically deterministic. You know exactly what type of answers, it's black or white, right? When you talk about artificial intelligence, typically what you do is you first collect data, and based on this data, you try to develop your program. So you train typically your program. So you develop a model to try to answer some questions about this data. So first you go collect the data, give them to your program that you develop with those data. And then at the end, you get an answer. But in this case, the big difference to the first example I gave is that typically what the answer you get is a probability. So it will tell you, okay, based on the data I learned about and the one you just gave me right now, it will tell you, okay, it's likelihood 90% this is a dog or this is a cat when you give an image like that. And this is very important to understand that, because this probability, especially in our medical device, when we talk about patients, it's important to understand, okay, what I'm able to get as an answer from my artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and as you said, so mainly we have the input, we know what output we want to have, and what is happening in the middle is mainly this artificial intelligence that will try to find a solution. It's like a maze, try to find a solution to say, okay, now I know that each time you give me this, it means that. So now I find the way on the maze to go to that direction. So each time you send me something that looks like that, so it will go through this maze on the same direction. If it's a cat, it's this direction. If it's a dog, it's this direction, etc. So, but as soon as this maze or these connections are done, it's frozen, I suppose.
Well, this is exactly the important aspect to understand. So there are a few different types of artificial intelligence. There are some where you lock, exactly as you said, so it's frozen, but you can also have some models that continuously learn with the data that are injected in their operational status. And this is really also crucial to know in which models are you, because if it's continuously learning, then you really need to have very crucial monitoring in place, because if it's learning in the wrong direction, how do you ensure that the outcome is still correct, right? So in many cases, or the projects we have been facing, it's more a locked basis. So you have a certain set of data that you use to develop your model, and then this is frozen for that, and then tested for that, and then you put it in production, and then you can continue to monitor. Okay, is it good? Is it bad? And you make a retraining based on additional data you might have missed in the first phase of training. And this is really a crucial difference, if it is doing it autonomously or if it's you or as a manufacturer deciding on when you want to retrain or optimize the artificial intelligence itself.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll talk about that mainly just after for some of the risks that we are seeing on that. Another question, we are talking about artificial intelligence. Sometimes we hear about machine learning, neural network. Is this different types, so it's exactly the same with different vocabulary, or each one has its own particularity? Or
yeah, I mean, I don't want to become too technical because there are many people that are probably not so expert into that, but usually you have a certain hierarchy. So artificial intelligence is the broad term. A sub part of that is machine learning. And then you have a subset of machine learning, which are more aspects like exactly neural networks, all these aspects you might have heard. But all those terms are not synonym. And it's sometimes really important to have also, you have experts that know exactly what all those terms mean. But it's important, maybe as we talked about that QA also, or QA array, understand, okay, what does that mean for me in terms of quality? In which area am I? What type of model does that mean? And how can I specify, test it, verify it? So it's important to have a basic understanding, but it can become quite technical. This is why it is important to have a bridge between the technicalities and the quality aspects.
Yeah, as you said, so the idea is mainly to have the right vocabulary, the right understanding. Also because we have made a previous episode where we talk about connection between the software developers and the quality team, and we say also talking the same language is important, so for quality people to understand that. So yeah, it's something that is really, really important here.
And so many use this as synonym: artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, but this is actually not exactly the case. So you should try to understand the differences within that and identify where are you with your products that you want to develop, right?
Exactly. So in terms of artificial intelligence, we are, as I've said, associating that with the fact that this can take the control of the world. At the end, it will be more powerful than humans, so then they can control humans, etc., and etc. So what are the risks that we have now in artificial intelligence for medical devices specifically? So what are the things that realistically we can say there is here a risk here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an important aspect. And this is not only in medical device, by the way, the case, but also in other areas. I mean, when you talk about self-driving car, if someone gets an accident, you also need to evaluate those risks. But generally speaking, what is important to be aware of is that you always have a certain bias or risks based on several aspects. So the data you selected originally to train your model. You can have certain effects that you overfit based on the data you got at the beginning. So you are really good at this set of data you got, but as soon as something unexpected happens, then the artificial intelligence gives you some totally bullshit, let's say, so something that has really no valid answer, which is something where the human can react quite well to new data. And artificial intelligence, if it's something where the model was really super optimized on what you gave, then it might react totally badly. You have the other way around. If you only have the average of what you had in the model, then you are not really so good, because in many cases you would give false positive or false negative. And this is something that, depending on the area you are, this could be quite crucial, especially when we talk about humans. Having false positive or false negative could be quite problematic. In one case, you do maybe too much of doctor investigation. If the algorithm tells you, oh, I think this guy might have this disease, then the doctor will investigate much more, and maybe at the end there is nothing. But if it is the other way around, the algorithm tells you, oh, but there is no disease here, and the doctor doesn't pay attention, all of a sudden you might say to the patient, you can go back home. There is no risk in here.
And it's why I suppose also we have a lot of disclaimers on those kind of software to say, this is just for information purpose. You still need to analyze everything and to verify that it's correct. You still have to have a second opinion, etc. It's not like you just take it and use it as is. You have really to process this information. So I suppose this is the reason also.
I think these disclaimers are important, but I think when the technology will evolve, I think step by step, we will start to see more and more of autonomous artificial intelligence, where maybe the doctor will not be so much involved as it might be right now. And this is important to really define what are the key criteria, the key aspects that we want to monitor. So I talked about this true positive, true negative. Maybe you have heard about some, there are some specific factors. Maybe you have heard about F1 factor, which is a famous criteria that is used to make the best trade-off. So any of this algorithm is usually a compromise between, okay, I want to be sure that I only have true positive, then you exclude maybe some data, or if you want to be sure that you don't make any mistake, you are always in a trade-off situation. And this F1 score is exactly what you can use to determine, okay, what is the criteria I want to use to verify if my algorithm is good enough or not good enough. And this is something that is also recommended by some health authorities. We will come to that, I think, later on, but maybe to give some concrete examples. So there are some famous study or some famous examples of also how you can misinterpret some of the data or overinterpret some of the data. Maybe you have heard about, has nothing to do with medical device, but there is a famous example that is provided in many artificial intelligence lectures. It's about wolf versus husky challenge.
Okay, what's that?
The objective is the algorithm needs to determine if a picture is husky or a wolf. Okay. You know, it looks very similar. Even for humans, it might be sometimes tricky to determine, okay, is it good or is it bad? And there was a challenge to make an algorithm that would determine that. And it was surprisingly very successful, this algorithm. But I realized at the end that the problem was as soon as, for example, you had a wolf that was not with the snow in the background, that algorithm was completely failing. Because actually what they developed was a snow detector, because many of the images that were given to train the data, to train the model, were with a wolf with snow in the background and the husky with some grass in the background. And so at the end, they thought, wow, fantastic, we are detecting easily that. But at the end, the problem was the data were not representative enough. So they thought, oh, cool, the model is perfect. But as soon as you got real data, real stimulation, then the algorithm was failing.
Because it's not focusing on the husky or the wolf. It's also taking the environment around, etc. So there is also some match that needs to be there because it's linking to this kind of image. Then
it is really important to be aware of this type of bias that might occur, because this can occur very well as well in our medical device world. So there is also another famous example which is closer to us. Is there was a similar attempt to determine, okay, we checked patients with pneumonia.
Okay.
And there was the additional factor of are those patients having asthma or not?
Okay.
And typically, when you have a pneumonia and you have asthma, this is an additional factor that would lead the doctor probably to tell you, okay, this patient should probably stay in the hospital and not be sent at home. And what they did is they also tried to stimulate an artificial intelligence with this type of data. And at the end, what they wanted to check is what is the surviving rate of the patient, right? Is it better? And what the artificial intelligence came with the conclusion is that the surviving rate was actually better with pneumonia and asthma. But in this case, what they suggested is send back this patient at home because the surviving rate is better. Okay. But they didn't pay attention to the fact that, okay, but the fact that they survive is because they were actually put
at the hospital.
Station at the hospital, right? So these are really interesting theoretical or practical use case where you can see it's very important to really understand what data do you need, what the model is capable of delivering, and interpreting as well what the model can tell you. And this is where you really need to have a teamwork. You need to have the SME, so really the guy knowing the clinical aspects very well and know exactly what are the critical aspects to check, and as well the technical people that are able to stimulate with those data properly and develop the right model, and be sure that you really don't overinterpret what you get or misinterpret what you get from those data. Because in the example I gave with pneumonia, I mean, of course, it was just a case where the doctor did not trust yet the artificial intelligence. But let's say you go to the reception at the hospital, it checks this type of thing and say, go back home, please.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would
I think it's really important to have all those experiences or real world information. Yeah, I mean, here you get those information, you try to process them. As you said, there is interpretation, and as we always say, you can make the numbers say whatever you want them to say. So mainly this is the kind of thing. So, but do you think that we have enough background also from the quality, regulatory affairs, health authorities, etc., to understand all that and to make the right decision to say, oh, let's qualify this product because this and that? Do we have the knowledge, enough knowledge now to be able to authorize some products to be on the market or not because of all those real world information? Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
I mean, that's coming back to the training aspect we talked at the beginning. I think this is for everyone, for the notified body, for the QA, for the developer, but as well for the health authorities. These are all a bit new world, but it's not so new anymore. As you said at the beginning, there are already, and this is maybe just my perspective, but I have the feeling health authorities are even in the driving seat on everything related to AI. In many occasions, I have the feeling, okay, they are always behind what the manufacturer and what the people are developing. But here they were already proactively thinking quite ahead in advance about, okay, what do we need to consider for machine learning, for artificial intelligence? And I think FDA back already in 2018 or 19, I'm not sure anymore, made this pre-cert program you might have heard about.
Yeah.
Part of that was also to release a white paper, which is meanwhile has been further developed on, okay, what is really the expectations in terms of regulations, of regulatory side, to validate or to prove that those models can work. And so the FDA came with a concept you might have heard about, good machine learning practice, GMLP. I think this was half of a joke because they already have good manufacturing practice, good laboratory practice. Yeah. Here it's GMLP. But there are quite a lot of aspects that, from what I already mentioned in there, in this good machine learning practice about, okay, you need to have really a key central aspect is you need to select a proper data set. Proper data set with, okay, what does that mean? Having enough data that are representative for the clinical aspect I want to treat, but also a critical aspect is to separate those data into, okay, one part you use to really develop your model, but one other part you use to verify your model. And this should not be the same data, because if you use a certain set of data to train the model and test with exactly the same data, then of course it will be very good. This is the example I gave with the Husky before. Of course, the model will be perfect because he knows already what you are going to ask him, right? So it is really important to have the segregation and also the statistical representativity of those data. So having enough cases that represent really what is available on this clinical case itself, right? So those are aspects that are already clearly defined in there, as well as the explainability of the model. So how can you also explain to the notified body or to the authorities how it is really working? So per definition, some of the aspects are sometimes a bit black boxing. You don't know exactly what happens in the deep of the neural networks or the aspects, but how was it designed? How was it really, how did you select the data? How do you ensure this data are integer? And I think those aspects are really important and goes into this explainability. And also what are the criteria to ensure your model is good? So I talked about this F1 score, for example, before. So define exactly what are your acceptance criteria. So how do you, are you going to judge that this is good? Or where do you think it should be a trigger that, for example, the doctor should have a look at that? If, for example, an algorithm will tell me, okay, I think you have 50.1% to have a tumor, does that mean, okay, he has it, or the other way around, 50.1 to not have a tumor, and then the doctor doesn't pay attention to that? Well, I think that should be not really how we should act on that. If it's saying, okay, 99.9%, maybe there is less scrutiny that is expected from the doctor. But also these type of things are relevant in terms of risk management, instruction for use for the users. So where do we expect a certain, is the algorithm then supposed to say, I don't know, please have a look? Or is the algorithm supposed to say, I think 50.9% it is that? Or what do we really expect? This is really also a crucial aspect in terms of usability and risk management here that are maybe specific and different to a classical algorithm, because this probabilistic aspect is coming into the game here.
Yeah, I think this is also an important point. You can develop the tool, the software with everything. At the end, you give the information as an output, as a percentage, as you said, 50.1%. Then there is two decisions, or we give this number and the doctor is choosing or deciding what to do, or we give this number with some scales to say if it's between 90 to 99, then it's nearly sure it's fine. If it's between that and that, you should still do this exam or this thing. If this is etc. etc. So give some guidance also. So there are multiple ways that the software developers can also do that, but this can also change their risks in terms of software regulation, etc. All the tests that they have to do and to prove that all the outcomes are correct, etc. So there are more maybe requirements for that. In terms of FDA, because apparently FDA is really in advance for these things. They have issued guidances, and I suppose a lot of people are looking at those guidances also. What about the other regions? So Europe, I saw that also last time it was Saudi Arabia that has issued something also in Australia. Are we talking about a common approach, harmonized approach here, or they are completely different and going in different direction, and then I have to follow these rules for US, this rule for you, this rule for Australia, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I mean, this is a general question that is not only for artificial intelligence relevant, but I think here especially there are a lot of movements. It's not only FDA, so as you correctly said, there are other countries. There was also a joint paper made by the FDA with Canada and UK authority. You might have heard about that.
No, I didn't saw that, no.
Also listing some good practices for machine learning. So this was a joint effort for this region. So let's say the English-speaking world. I don't know exactly how to formulate that, but UK, Canada, and US together. In the EU, you already talked about specific aspects in another podcast about the AI Act.
AI Act, yeah, with Eric Volbrecht we talk about it. I think we'll do another one because I think there was some changes also on the European AI Act, yeah.
This one is not specific for medical device, but it's also interesting in terms of regulations. But maybe you have heard about also, I think you talked about that in a recent regulatory update. There is as well some paper from the ENISA, the
Yeah, I
cybersecurity.
saw. I just on the previous monthly review. Yeah, we have this big paper talking about the model of medical imaging with the threats due to AI for cybersecurity and for privacy. Also, yeah. So there was also
This
this
one
model.
is, I can really recommend to read it. It's
Yeah.
interesting because it gives perspective first on AI generally. So in that specific use case, they talk about its osteoporosis. So they talked about also here, how can you give X-ray images and get some recommendation from an algorithm. And this is talking generally about the AI first. And then they talk about also cybersecurity aspects. And so some aspects are, I would say, have nothing to do with the AI itself. So it's more generic aspects like, okay, you have patient data in the cloud, it's pseudonymized data, or to protect those data and ensure they are not used for other purposes. But there are also some specific cybersecurity risks related to the use of AI. And you might have heard about poisoning attack.
Yeah.
So here there are some threats that come into the game that you can also have. Either it is one person. This is maybe during the training of the model. There might be, in the example they give, it's a radiologist maybe is fearing that he will lose his job because AI will replace his position, right? So he might be manipulating the data by saying, okay, this one is not osteoporosis, or this one is, when it's the other way around, so that the model at the end gives bad answer, and then you say, oh, I'm still needed, you know. And the same can happen also with some cybersecurity attacks. So you can get some Trojan that would do similar things, some manipulations of the model or of the data. And so they also recommend here some specific risk management. And there are here some specific countermeasures you can apply against those things. And maybe you have heard about STRIP. This is something they talk about. It becomes really technical here, but it stays for strong intentional perturbation. And this is a way to they intentionally modify or perturbate the data coming into the model to see if there is a kind of deterministic manipulation happening in the model. So it's quite technical, as I said, but there are ways to counterfeit these aspects. But the paper is really good because it gives the general aspects of AI, also the cybersecurity in general, but also cybersecurity risk specifically to an AI aspect. So I can really recommend to read that.
I think what we are saying now is really important for the medical device manufacturers also, because those documents, those guidances, the health authorities, the notified bodies are also checking that and looking at that. So surprisingly, maybe when you will present to them your product, your software, they will maybe have those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this model? What about poisoning? What about strip? What about this? What about that? And if you are here saying, what is he talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
You are not in a good shape then. It's why try to be ahead of the authorities or notified bodies, because if they ask you those questions, you should be aware, as per the regulation, you should always keep up to date the regulatory aspect and quality information standards, etc., etc. So try to get knowledgeable about this, because they may ask you, and they may need also to get some evidence that you are taking that into account.
I mean, this is the general regulations, risk management. It's just that there are additional risks, right, that can come with, okay, the probability we talked a lot about. There are some additional cybersecurity risks. There are some additional aspects that you really need to be aware of when you talk about artificial intelligence. And as you said, you need to be ahead of what potentially can be asked. And if there are some white papers like that, you need to know them before you get marking for those markets, because these will certainly be aspects they will want to have a look at, right? So if you have from the FDA, some from the EU, you need to know them. And they are, luckily, I would say, quite well overlapping. So the aspects we talked about, good machine learning practices, right model, right data separation, this is found in many of those white papers. There is also one from Saudi Arabia that was published. So, and this one is also repeating some of these things. And to answer the question about the global, I think that would be a nice thing to try to harmonize at the IMDRF, DRF level, that really we can try to have really a global standpoint. Okay, what do we really want to have in terms of artificial intelligence? But whether or not this is utopic, I don't know, because we have the same situation with normal products right now, that depending on the country you want to sell it, it's quite diverse. So it's
clear. Also a question here about those projects. So I was last week on a conference in Lausanne, which was about startups that are trying to get some investment from people. And I was there just to give the aspect of the quality and the regulatory affairs situation for EU MDR and all the rest. And during the talk, one person asked me, but in terms of artificial intelligence, are there already some products, some software as medical devices that are certified for EU MDR, etc.? So I was surprised. I said, yes. I mean, I'm helping some companies, so I give some names, but it was like surprising for them that it's already passing some certification, because for them, artificial intelligence is not really something that we can easily make regulation pass. So is there a list or something somewhere where we can see all the products that are already approved and have this functionality of artificial intelligence?
Yes, there is, and there is actually, and maybe you can put that on the show notes afterwards, the link to, there is a FDA list. This is not an up-to-date or dynamic list, but they update it, I think, once a year or something like that. I think the last update was from autumn last year, I think. And you can find out there examples. It's not meant to be holistic, but you can already find there, I think, something like 500 medical device using AI that are officially released on the market. And they all even offer you a download of an Excel file where you can build statistics. You would see that, for example, quite a lot is within the radiology area. So a lot of the things are happening in there in the AI world. So the osteoporosis example is not coming from nowhere. I think these are really concrete use cases that are quite heavily already productively used. So really image processing, having a look at some X-ray or MRI data, and out of that, try to deduce if there are some specific symptoms or disease available. So this list is not meant to be, I think, a holistic list from the FDA, but as I said, it already contains, I think, more than 500.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now because I just searched while you are speaking on the thing. So I say, yeah, it's artificial intelligence and machine learning enabled medical devices with 531 products. Yeah, a lot of products: radiology, cardiovascular, what else again? Clinical chemistry, ophthalmic, neurology. Yeah, so there are a lot of products. So I think it can be, and even one product that I have helped to get CE certification. Okay. So great. It's also in the US. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I will put this list on the show notes so that you can get that. But yeah, so you see, yeah, it's not the future anymore.
Yeah,
there are already some products that are certified. We have that for FDA. Do we have a list for EU, or
I'm not aware that there is a similar list of EU, but I might just don't know about that, because as we talked about, it's quite dynamic as well on the regulatory side. So it could be that they also publish something similarly. But the one from the FDA is already, I would say, useful to just, answer the question you had before. I mean, it's not the future. We already have so many that are on the market. For me, what would be interesting as well, maybe to add in the list, is we talked at the very beginning about, is it a locked algorithm, or is it now a continuous learning algorithm?
Yeah.
And maybe this would be also interesting to see, do we already have really machines continuously learning and that are just deciding on themselves how they continue to learn a little bit? But this type of classification would be as well interesting to see in this.
Yeah, I think it could be really great just to know also which software we can because getting also those real information can help also new manufacturers to develop maybe the right things also. So it's I think great. Okay, so now I think we covered all the topics that I wanted to ask you today on AI. And as said, this is a topic that will be, we will talk about that maybe within the next decade, if I can say, because there are a lot of improvements that are happening, a lot of changes, even in the regulation. I'm happy also that sometimes the manufacturers are ahead of the regulation, because then they can test, verify, and they can maybe make some mistakes. But at the end, the regulation comes back and then really put some scope and then focus on some risks and whatever. So this is mainly something that is really also important. Okay, so Christophe, thank you for that. Can we just, you are from Wega, so why people should contact you if they have any need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so specifically on the artificial intelligence, so what we do have a lot as well internally is we have also data scientists, artificial intelligence experts that are able to either develop the model or really also talked about it with the developers within companies. So we have some startups, for example, they have the expertise in the model, but they don't know what are the regulations behind, how should they specify. So it's important to have also someone able to speak the language. Okay, what does it talk about now when you talk about convolutional neural network? Is it really, for some people, it might sound really totally exotic. And we have really this expertise in-house, as well as the regulatory and quality affairs side. So we are here to help on all these aspects to decide on how to develop the model, to validate those models, ensuring they are good. Also, what to put in place in terms of post-market surveillance to monitor as well.
Yeah.
This is also a very important aspect, that you continuously check, is it going in the right direction with real-world data? Do I get some mistakes over there? How can I then retrain my model based on that? So those are all strategies that are important to have in mind, and where we are happy to help.
No, great. So don't hesitate to contact Christophe or anybody from Wega if you have any request. I'll put anywhere all the information on the show notes, so to get the website and all the information about that. And I think I put also some links to some of your maybe websites or articles that you have already created for Wega.
I created an article as well with some neurologists or doctors about some of these aspects we talked about. It was published in Nature, which
I have the article.
We rediscuss exactly some of the aspects ethically as well. Okay, how should the doctor react? How should the doctor understand these type of things, these models? This article is a lot about that. So
great. So for those that are listening, don't hesitate to go on the show notes. There are all the information. We put a lot of information also for you to learn, and also to, if you want to contact Wega for any other question. Okay, thanks, Christophe. It was really helpful. I hope we have maybe a lot of interest from the people that will be listening. And if there is any question or anything, so don't hesitate to contact directly Christophe, or you can contact me at info@easymedicaldevice.com, info@easymedicaldevice.com. Okay, Christophe, so thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you so much, Munir. Have a nice day.
You too, bye.